With over 30 years experience in this industry, I have seen people make the same mistakes over and over again. And in this video, I want to share with you 8 of those mistakes that could be very costly and could impact your retirement. But before we get there, please do subscribe to my channel. I've got all these years and all these conversations with my clients, all the conversations I have with my peers, and I want to share some of that with you so that you can pursue the retirement you desire. So how many of you have been to Disney World? Raise your hands. Well, I can see me raise my hands. You'll have to do it on your own. I remember speaking at a conference and I asked the audience, how many have been to Disney? And I said, how many have been once? A whole bunch of people. How many have done 3 times? Almost as many people. 5, 7. I couldn't get all the hands down until I got to about 15. But let me share with you my experience in taking my daughter when she was 7 years old. I remember getting the book. Remember the book? It showed you and told you what rides you should go to on which days, mornings or afternoons, so you don't spend all the time there, which hotels to frequent, where to get the best dinners and lunches. I scripted out everything, knew exactly what the budget was going to be, how long we were going to be there, and we created the greatest memories. It's now 26 years later, still have the memory book, and I'm sure you do too. But what's all this got to do with retirement? Here it is, and here's the headline. You've seen it before. People spend more time planning for their trip to Disney than they do for their retirement. We have to flip this switch. I'm not saying don't prepare for Disney, but prepare for your retirement. It's like opening up a whole new business, this next chapter of life. Don't you want it to be the very best it can? And I want you to spend the time. And by the way, and these are conversations that I've had with prospective clients who have come to talk to me about retirement planning. It is never too early or never too late to do the planning. And no matter how much money you do or don't have, or how much you think you need versus what you thought you needed, plan. Find out what you need to do, what your goals are, what your vision is, and find out if you are on the right track. Think of the outcome as being as joyous, even longer so, than going to Disney. By the way, I'm going to ask you a question later on in this video that maybe you've been asked before but didn't know how to answer it. I find that when I ask this question, I sort of get some perplexed looks back. So stay tuned on this one. It's really important about whether or not you think you could retire today. The number 2 mistake is claiming Social Security too early. So almost about, according to the Social Security Administration, about 1/3 of all people who are eligible to collect Social Security at age 62 do. And that's not always the right thing. As a matter of fact, United Income did a study. They showed that 96% of people chose Social Security at the wrong time. They also said that most people are better off waiting until 70 to claim, but 43% of adults are actually better off claiming before age 70. The big takeaway from the study, by claiming at the right time, more than half of retirees would see their income in their 70s and 80s rise by more than 25%. So I want to go over some of the basics, but not in real depth. To do that, go to my Basics of Social Security video. There's much more on there, but let me take you to my screen for just a moment. So let's start very quickly with the definition of full retirement age. If you were born between 1943 and 1954, your full retirement age is 66. If you were born in 1960 or later, it's 67. For instance, for me, I'm born in 1955. My full retirement age is 66 and 2 months. And that's the number that you get for your primary insurance amount, and that everything is based off of looking forward, and full retirement age is the number that everything is based off of. So what if you apply for early benefits? Let's say, for instance, your full retirement age was 67 and you claimed at 62. You would only get 70% of the benefit that you were eligible for if you had waited until age 67. Now, obviously, there are some factors involved with whether or not you should get Social Security at 62. Health, life expectancy, your current and future need for income, whether or not you plan to work, and survivor needs. These are just some of the items that you should be thinking about in terms of the 567 different strategies available to you. But let's ask the question, why delay benefits? If you take a look at this chart, you'll see that if you had claimed at 62, go down on the left-hand side, and let's say you're now 85, you'd be getting $3,311. But if you were 67 and claimed it at 67, and now you're 85 years old, you'd be getting $4,731. And if your full retirement age was 67, and you waited to defer to the latest point in time, age 70, then if you had started at 70, at age 85, you'd be getting $5,866. That's a big difference in income, right? So you really need to play this properly, and don't claim Social Security early just because you can. The third mistake I find people making is that they are afraid to invest their money, particularly in the stock market. So let's go through some of those reasons why. One, they may not think they have enough money to make an impact. But that's silly, because any impact you can make for yourself is your impact, whether large or small. No matter how big or small that nest egg is, you should be looked to prudently investing your money. Lack of knowledge. Listen, with the internet, with YouTube, right? You can find all sorts of information now that's no longer a good excuse. A study was done, and this is done all the time, not just with regards to the stock market, but in terms of behavior of people. We are more impacted by loss than we are by gain. This is an enormous topic that I'm not going to delve into right now, but just take my word on it for right now, okay? It really hits us hard when we lose money, for example. We really are afraid of that, even more so than being glad or happy that we made money. Our behavior is driven more by the fear of the loss than the potential of gain. So we have to be able to overcome that fear. And then finally, some might just say it's too risky. But that again, to me, goes to a lack of understanding and knowledge with regards to what the market might be able to provide. And again, you come on YouTube and you get all the answers now. So I want to ask you a question right now. Are you prepared for retirement? Do you know if you're on track? I want you to go to my banner and I want you to hit the quiz. I wrote the book, my fourth book, Don't Outlive Your Money in Retirement. And as a result of this book, we did create this quiz. It's a quick 2-minute investment into yourself. 15 questions. Answer the questions. I'll immediately get back to you. Which one of the 3 retirement preparedness stages you are in. I'll also get you a free chapter of the book along with some worksheets to provide some more clarity for you. So go ahead and click the banner. I'm going to get to that other question with regards to whether or not you could retire today And I'm going to save that for the end. So please stay tuned. This is really, really insightful with regards to the conversations we've had with our clients and their reactions to that question. But the next big mistake I find is not doing anything about protecting and preserving your assets, particularly long-term care. So let me share with you a particular call I got a number of years ago. I had a client. We had been talking about long-term care insurance for a long time. She decided she didn't need it. She didn't want it. I understood it. It's just my job to make my clients aware of stuff. I can't make their decisions for them. On a Friday afternoon, I get a call from her. She says, you know that conversation we were having about long-term care? I'd like to get it now. I went, whoa, why? She says, well, on Monday, true story, on Monday, I'm going in for a brain operation, and I don't know what the outcome is going to be. Unfortunately, it's too late. Insurance doesn't work like that. You have to be prepared in advance. You can't wait till a disaster strikes and then take it. Medicare will probably not cover most of the costs you think they will for those things associated with long-term care. And studies have come out that have shown that somewhere in the vicinity of 70% of those who are currently age 65 will need some sort of long-term care in the future. Now, we all take insurance out, right? We have insurance on our home. We have insurance on our car. For many, you have life insurance in the event of something happens and the legacy, the spouse, the kids need some money. Why aren't we thinking of long-term care insurance in the same way? Some think that they can self-fund it. In other words, let's say it's going to cost on average $150,000 to $200,000 a year. That's a large number. And depending upon what studies you read and for whatever the reason is that you go into a facility, for whatever the needs are, could be a year and a half, 2 years, 5 years. Could be, you could end up being in there longer than your care providers if it's, let's say, Alzheimer's. So it all depends what length of stay, but we know it's costly. So for self-funding, you need a lot of money. I mean a lot of money in order to self-fund this out of cash flow. So here's the question for you. If long-term care insurance were free, would you have it? And if your answer is yes, then go back to your financial advisor or insurance agent and find out, given that you know that you want the insurance, find out how to get it at a cost that is reasonable for you that can protect your assets. So the next big mistake is underestimating your future costs. Or the way I put this is sometimes planning for perfect. Now, cash flow, and I've said this over and over again on this channel, cash flow is king, right? And the proper way of doing cash flow planning and retirement planning, and here's where I think the industry has really done a lousy job of this. They always talk about investments first and foremost, but when you go into retirement, it's about cash flow, not investments. The cash flow drives how much risk you will take on your investment portfolio. So I say to people, and here, just Google it. Google cash flow worksheet, right? This is an exercise we take along the 7 steps that we have created for our clients. But if you're doing this on your own, there are 2 mistakes I find that people make. And it goes back to planning for perfect on the first one. You plan for exactly what you think your costs are going to be, but exactly never happens. There's always a what-if scenario down the road. So when you put in your number, I don't care if it's $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month that your need is, up it by at least 10% on a monthly basis until you get a better handle as you are into retirement in terms of what that need actually is. The other mistake is, believe it or not, if I need $5,000 and I plan for $5,000, a lot of people forget about the fact you have to earn more than the $5,000 to pay, and you have to pay for taxes. So remember, those are the 2 mistakes. Don't plan for perfect, and plan for taxes. Now, the next big mistake is retiring too early, which sort of goes to that question I'm going to give you in just a moment or so about if you could retire today. But let's stick to retiring too early and some of the mistakes as a result of doing this. First, even if you have the money, do you have a purpose? Do you know how you're going to lead the rest of your life? It's one of the biggest questions that we deal with, that I talk to my colleagues and friends about, that I talk to my clients about. Outside of running out of money, how am I going to live the rest of my life? How am I going to be fulfilled? If you don't have that answer, retiring too early and not filling that portion of your life could be a big mistake. Second, don't want to diminish the fact, but you do need a nest egg to retire that can generate the income that you need. And the only way to take the mystery out of this question is, do I have enough money? Is to do the planning. You may decide, and this pandemic may have given you a glimpse into what retirement might be, but you may decide to change your lifestyle. All right, you no longer liked what you were doing before. You want to do something differently, pursue something differently. Retiring early, that could be one of the reasons why you would retire early if you found that you wanted a new lifestyle. Another thing that could prompt retiring early is a health situation. And again, many people who have retired early have been forced into this. But you have to be very careful with regards to the planning here. Obviously, if there is a health situation, there's no such thing as retiring too early, because you have to if that's what is mandated. But be very careful as you do go down this road as it relates to how much money you have now and how much you will have later. And then finally, again, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make when they retire too early, again, they may take Social Security too early, they may not have enough money, but they just may not be filling them, not getting rewarded, not pursuit of a passion. And if you don't have that or have that to go to, then maybe you want to extend your retirement a little bit until you get more definition. The seventh mistake, and this was indicated in a study recently done by the Employee Benefits Research Institute. And they did a study of almost 2,000 people who had less than $1 million in assets. And the question was, how satisfied are they? And they found that the folks in there were three different tiers, and the top tier and the next tier, an average of, let's call it $300,000 in assets in total. They found that their satisfaction level, or should I say, how happy they were in retirement relative to what their expectations were in retirement, they gave it like an 8 out of 10 score. But the one group that did not find that they were satisfied or happy in retirement were those in the bottom tier, and the majority of those folks had too much debt. And this is a big mistake that you could be making as you enter into retirement, which is not correcting or not paying off the high interest debt that you might have, because it will stay with you for a very long time, impact your monthly cash flow, and impact your ability to pursue what you expect it to be, a happy retirement. So I'm going to present to you a story. Here's the question, okay? I asked you before, said it a couple of times. Here it is. If you could retire today, would you? And in the conversations I have with my clients as we lead into this eighth mistake is not really having an answer to that question, either in terms of where you are emotionally or financially. Because as you think about this question, could you retire? Or if you were able to retire today, would you? Some of you may go, yes, I'm out of here. Gave my notice, won the lottery, sayonara. But for others, you may be saying, Well, I don't know what I'm going to do. As I said in the previous mistakes, finding passion, fulfillment, reward, filling time. So I want to share with you a very important story. It was the foreword to my very first book. Jean was a client at the time. She had worked for the organization for 39 years. She was 57 years old, so you do the math. It was her only job, right? And she came in asking the question, when could I retire? And we did the numbers, and what we found out was Jean could retire today. So the way we left that meeting was she's going to go back to HR, present her paperwork, and she's going to retire within the next 4 to 6 weeks. She comes back into my office. She sits down and she starts to cry. And I'm looking at her, thinking, what did I do? The reality was, reality had set in for Jean. What she told me was, this was her second home. This was the reason she was getting up in the morning. She had a place to go to, structure. She had a reason to be. She could talk around the water bubbler with her colleagues and those who had become friends all this time. She was a respected member of a growing community that was helping to build a very successful business. And when she went to retire, she would lose all of that. Working is so much more than just the paycheck. And what we agreed to finally, and where she ended up with this, the answer for her was, yes, I could retire today, but I don't want to. I can't. I'm not ready here. So it took her about 3 more years to push that button. And when she did, she was all set and she was ready, both financially and emotionally. So ask yourself that very important question. Could you retire if you could today? Would you? Don't make the mistake of not being able to answer that question. And take a look at our playlist, How to Not Run Out of Money in Retirement.